Hey guys, it's Mrs. Brewer, and today we are going to talk about the new math concept that is on your choice board for this week. So in the past couple weeks, we've been talking a little bit about fractions. What is a fraction? How do we write a fraction? How do we model a fraction? And we've said that fractions are equal parts of a whole. We've said that we use a fraction bar with a numerator and a denominator. The numerator tells us how many are shaded of the parts, and the denominator tells us how many parts are total in the whole. So we've talked about that. We've talked about how to model them using circles. We've talked about how we might model them using like a rectangle and splitting them into their equal parts. And today we're going to do just a different strategy for how to model fractions, and this is fractions on the number line. So when we look at fractions on a number line, what we are going to do is we're going to use this number line, and we are going to first of all start with 0 as our endpoint, okay? All fractions are going to start at 0. Now, sometimes on our number line, we might have more than one whole. But first, let's talk about how do we do this when there's only one whole in question. So, if we say that we are going to have one whole, our endpoints are going to be 0 and 1, okay? Now, once we have determined our endpoints, now we're going to look at our fraction. What I want to do for today is I want to split it into fourths, okay? So if I split this number line into fourths, that means that from here to here needs to have 4 equal pieces. Now, one whole is going to be equal to all of the fourths. So that is actually going to be equal to, well, how many fourths are in one whole? 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, right? So when I drew my box, I would say if all 4 pieces are present, that is 4/4. So if that is 4/4, then one whole, we are also going to be able to put down 4/4. So that's our endpoint. Now, our other endpoint is 0. If I have no fourths, nothing shaded in yet, that endpoint is going to be marked as 0/4, okay? Now, we need to split this, so we have equal pieces. Well, let's see, if I split it here in the middle, how many equal parts do I now have? I have 1, 2, okay? That would be halves. So to take it from halves to fourths is pretty simple, right? Because a fourth is just half of a half. So let's go ahead and let's split the halves. Notice, this is where it's tricky because you want to make 4 lines because you're doing fourths. Well, notice how many lines are in the middle. 1, 2, 3. There's always going to be one less line than what the denominator is because your endpoint is the last part of that fourth, okay? So I've got my fourths now. Now I need to mark my fourths, okay? Label these. So the first one after 0/4 would be 1/4, our unit fraction. Okay, if I'm going to count, 1, 2 would come next. So the next one must be 2/4. So 0/4, 1/4, 2/4. This next line must be 3/4, right? Okay, and 4/4. Now, once you've done this much, generally it's going to ask you to do something. It's going to say, you're ready, it's going to say, place a point, so a dot, okay, where you find a certain fraction. So for today, let's put a dot where we find 1/4. Where is 1/4 at on this number line? If we're looking, we see 1/4 right here, okay? So our dot is going to go up above the line right there. That would be 1/4. We might even go ahead and call that point A. Ready might now tell you, okay, now I want you to place a point at 3/4 and label it point B. So then I would just look at my number line again and I would go, okay, 1/4, 2/4, oh, 3/4. All right, so I find 3/4, I put my point, and I said we were going to label that point B. So above the dot, we are going to put a B, point B. Okay, let's do one more like this, and then we're going to do a little bit more complex one because we're going to have more than one whole. Okay, so this time on our number line, go ahead and erase here. This time, let's split it into thirds. Okay, so we're going to do thirds. Now, if I do thirds on here, my endpoints are still going to be, for right now, I'm only using one whole. So my endpoints are going to be 0. Oops, I should do that up above, sorry. 0 and 1. Okay, now if I'm doing this as thirds, I know that this is 0 thirds. And how many thirds make up one whole? Well, remember, when we have a whole, the numerator and the denominator are the same number, okay, for one whole. So that would mean that if this is one whole, this is how many thirds? It would be 3 thirds, because the numerator and the denominator have to match to be a whole, one whole. All right, so now I need to split this into 3 equal parts. I notice when looking at this, if I'm going to count by thirds, I would count 0 thirds, 1 third, 2 thirds, 3 thirds. Right now, I have 0 thirds and 3 thirds. So I'm missing 1 thirds and 2 thirds on my number line. So what I need to do is I need to kind of go ahead and make 2 marks on my number line. Those are going to be my other 2 thirds. I'm going to go ahead and kind of try to space them evenly. That may be a little bit more challenging with some of these than others. Do the best you can, okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to label this point 1 third and this point 2 thirds. Now, this is where I want you to go ahead and put a dot, put a point, a dot, on 2 thirds. So I would look at my number line here. I've labeled all of it. It makes it really easy. And I would say, okay, where is 2 thirds? Well, 0 thirds, 1 third. Oh, here's 2 thirds. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the dot, and I'm going to label it point C. Okay? That is how we do fractions on a number line. I'll make another video later on that talks to you a little bit about how do we do fractions on a number line where we have more than one whole represented, okay? But for right now, here's your basic when we're going from 0 to 1 whole and we're doing fractions. How do we do that? All right, see you later. If you need any help, please reach out. Bye, guys.